Dear beloved Thai, dear beloved community, I know you're here and I'm very grateful and happy. Today I'd like to share with you this book written by our beloved teacher, Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. The title of the book is At Home in the World. At Home in the World. At home in myself, at home in the world has been an essential teaching and practice for me. It has meant everything to me. And so when brothers and sisters were volunteering to share a book with the beloved community, I volunteered to share about this book, At Home in the World. It's so wonderful to read a book and to find insights and wisdom on every single page. You can see I've marked a lot. I'm sure many of you remember the election day, election night. At about 6 o'clock, I think that was on November 5th, 2024, and I went to the sister's office and I turned on the news channel to look at the how the vote counting was going. And by that time, Trump was already leading. And I remember my heart beat very fast. And I felt this serious heaviness in my heart. And that weekend on Sunday, I was going to have a book signing. And so literally from 6 o'clock to almost 8 o'clock, I was writing in every book, at home in myself, at home in the world. So occasionally I would look at the news, but then I would turn off and I would just write at home in myself, at home in the world. I signed probably about 70 books just writing that. And it really helped calm me and help me to maintain a peaceful mind, knowing that whatever happens in the world, as long as I can be at home in myself, I will be able to be at home in the world, however turbulent it may be. At 8 o'clock, a group of us, monastic sisters and lay sisters, we gathered in the sisters' small meditation hall, looking at the, watching the election results as it was unfolding. And we had a short Dharma sharing, and we were asking each other what would happen. How would we practice if Trump were to win this election? And I remember having this resolve that I would live more beautifully. I would reach out to others more. I would do my best to be more generous with others. And that also gave me an intention, a direction to go forward regardless of the election results. Now, in this book, they shared about different periods of his life in Vietnam when he was a child, when he was growing up. They also shared about the Vietnam War. And they said that when he was placed in exile, as he was I think it was while he was in the US calling for the cessation of the Vietnam War, he received the news that his visas would not be acknowledged by many countries, and Vietnam put him on the most wanted list as an exile. And they said that the first 2 years were very difficult for him. I have to admit that the first 2 years of exile were quite difficult. Although I was already a 40-year-old monk with many disciples, I had still not yet found my true home. I could give very good lectures on the practice of Buddhism, but I had not truly arrived. Intellectually, I knew a lot about Buddhism. I had trained for many years in the Buddhist Institute and had been practicing since I was 16, but I hadn't yet really found my true home. So Thầy became a monk when he was 16 years old, and when he was 40, he still had not found his true home. He was at that point. So when we say at home in the world, how can we be at home in the world? And this part they shared that even though they was a monk for many years in Vietnam, and I grew up in Vietnam, I became a monk in Vietnam, I learned and practiced Buddhism in Vietnam. And before coming to the West, I taught several generations of Buddhist students in Vietnam. But I can say now that it was in the West that I realized my path. It was in the West, at Princeton University, where Thầy was teaching in 1962, that he found his true home. And his true home was actually learning to dwell happily in the present moment, in the here and the now. So that was Thay's discovery, that even though he was in exile, he could find his true home. And that whether he was in Vietnam or in France or in the US, or as he was traveling all over the world to call for the cessation of the Vietnam War, he was at home because he learned to dwell in the here and the now. This is a very important enlightenment and an important practice, because many of us, we yearned for the past, we hope for the future, but the present moment for us can be full of anxiety and uncertainty, and we just want to escape it. Young people use the word escape a lot. We don't like what's happening in ourselves, in our family, in the world. So we want to escape it. We want to deny it. But to learn to dwell in the here and now and to make it our true home, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, we still learn to anchor in it. That is a very deep practice. It helps us to stop running, to stop wishing, to stop yearning, but to just be with what is. In the here and the now, in the situation outside us, around us, in our own body, in our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own perceptions, whether they are agreeable or disagreeable. We learn to breathe with what is. Let us practice this, okay? Breathing in. I am aware of my body right now, right in the here and the now. How my body is feeling. It's cold. Many of us have colds or flus. We may have arthritic pain. Our chronic pain or chronic illness may flare, or maybe in the here and the now in our body, we feel a sense of strength and wellness. Just to be able to acknowledge what is with our in-breath and with our out-breath, we relax and smile with what is. We don't grasp for it, but we also don't reject it. Just hold it with awareness and with equanimity. As I breathe in, I acknowledge my body. Hello, my dear body. I acknowledge the pain, discomfort, or the source of strength, wellness in my body. And as I breathe out, I smile. I relax my whole body. It's a practice of non-fear, really, to be able to acknowledge what is and to be with what is. The Buddha taught about the 4 establishments of mindfulness. So when we practice mindfulness, there are concrete objects of our mindfulness. When you are mindful, you're mindful of something. Okay? So today I'd like to share with you the practice of being at home in ourselves, so that we can be at home in the world. They are not different from each other. So in the here and now, we can learn to be at home. In the body, at home in my body. It's very important. Many of us, we are not at home in our body. We want our body to look different from what it is. Many of us actually reject our body, feel ashamed about our body, feel uncomfortable in our own skin, in our own body. But to be able to embrace this body, to see that this body is our best friend, is our most faithful lover. This body has always been here for us through the thick and the thin. Whether we eat healthy or not, we get enough rest or not, whether we are kind to this body or we put our body through danger with our unmindful consumption, our abuse, our neglect. Our body tries to heal itself day after day. It enables us to get up in the morning, to go to work, to continue with our life. This body, to be able to be there for it, to be a soulmate to our body. When I learned the Chinese characters for soulmate and the Vietnamese meaning of it, it really gave me a direction. Tri kỷ, soulmate. Tri literally means to remember, to know, to take care of, to master. Tri kỷ. Kỷ means oneself. A soulmate is not somebody else who loves us unconditionally, who accepts us unconditionally, who can always be there for us. No. Many of us have been lucky enough to find somebody who loves us and cares about us. But if we don't know how to love and care, to remember, to know, to take care, to cherish of our body, of our own life, we will walk all over that person because we won't believe that there's such thing as true love. There's such thing as somebody can love us. We will doubt that person and that person's love. You see? So to be able to be a soulmate to our own body, to say, I know you are in pain, and I want to get to know this pain, what it means. When I was a child, my mother used to have a lot of back pain and muscle pain. And she asked my brother and me to walk on her back. And we were walking on her back, and I was just thinking about when it would be done so I could go play, you know. And then my mother, she passed away when she was only 36 and I was only 12. And then years later, when I was in my early 30s, I had a lot of physical pain. And I was very upset. I couldn't accept that debilitating pain. But one day when I was doing sitting meditation, it came to me, this is my mother's pain. She had passed away 20-something years already. And I did not have a good relationship with my mother at all. She was a very angry person. But when I realized that I feel my mother's pain in my own body, here she was, here I was, feeling my mother's pain, being in my mother's pain, in my mother's body. Something just opened up and softened inside me. And from that moment on, I was more than willing to accept and embrace that pain, because that was my connection to my mother. Such a deep, intimate connection that I had never never experienced before. To be a soulmate to our own body is to be a soulmate to the bodies of our parents, of our ancestors, whom we know and love or whom we do not know or love. And yet, the connection is there. To be a soulmate in our own body, we also learn to be safe to ourselves. Now, many of us, when we go through trauma or trials and tribulations in our life, we tend to hold this posture, defensive posture, physically and mentally. You know how a cut, an abrasion on the skin, it takes time to heal. But to have a damage in our internal organ, that takes a lot longer and much more difficult to heal a wound inside. And imagine a psychological wound. It takes even much more time and space and energy. It's so subtle. Sometimes we don't even know it exists. And yet it affects every single aspect of our life, of our way of thinking, speaking, and behaving. But to learn to be a soulmate to our body, we learn to be safe to ourselves, because very often when we are angry, or when we are very depressed, or when we are swept away by our strong emotions of fear, doubt, uncertainty, we tend to neglect our own body, or to be quite harsh or even violent to our bodies. We take it out on our body. So instead of thinking, am I safe in the world? Is my community gated, guarded? I have learned to ask, am I safe in my body? Am I safe to myself? Because the way I think about myself, about my body, the way I speak to myself, to my body, will determine whether I am safe to myself or not. If we keep telling ourselves, you are so stupid, disappear, you are not worthy, I hate you, we are not safe to ourselves at all. And if we are not safe to ourselves, we cannot be safe to others. We cannot be safe to the world. That is why I have learned, safe in myself, I am safe to the world. Let us breathe and again come back to our precious body. Breathe and smile and relax. And this is the best way to self-regulate, to calm the anxiety, the fear, the uncertainty, the sadness, to just simply breathe. Embrace, you can put your hands around your abdomen or around your chest. You can just hold yourself and breathe and say, I'm here for you. I love you. Help me to love and care for you. Safe in myself, I am safe in the world. So we learn to be at home in the here and the now. We learn to be at home in our body. Healing and growth can only take place when our body is relaxed, when our body is at ease, when our body feels safe. Only then can we have healing and growth. Otherwise, we are on survival mode all the time. And it is very, very stressful, physically and psychologically. Learning to be at home in our feelings. Now, we were wise enough that night. We watched the election unfolding only until 10 o'clock. I remember in 2016, Sister Nghiem and I, we stayed until 1. And we were so tired. That was the first time I missed morning sitting because of a political reason. This year, you have to be better with practice, right? So after 8 years, we stopped at 10. We accepted that. I went to bed. I was not depressed. I was just subdued. In the morning, I went to sitting, and I was calm. And on the way home, I passed, as I entered the nunnery, I passed Sư Ngoai's room. Sư Ngoai is our elderly sister. She's also an elder sister, but she's already 95 years old. And she just came back from her hospitalizations. She went to the hospital, I think 3 times in a matter of a month. She was still in her hospital gown. She still had this bag hanging out from her gallbladder. But after sitting meditation, as I was walking by her room, it was before 7, she was already sitting by her desk chanting. And so I thought, I am going to reach out to fulfill my aspiration, to reach out, to be kinder to others, to connect with others more. So I walked in the room and she was reading this sutra. And at first I didn't know which one she was reading. I had to sit for a while, calm my mind, and I realized that she was reading the sutra on the Four Nutriments. Sister Hiền Hải learned to read in her 70s as a nun. When she became a nun, other sisters taught her how to read. So now in her 90s, she could read the sutra slowly, word by word, but she was reading. And I was sitting on the floor, on the ground, breathing, listening to her. And she read about the Four Nutriments. And that, at those moments, everything just meant so much to me, what she was reading. Because the nutriment the Buddha taught is not only through edible food, the edible food that we feed through our mouth, but through our sensory impressions, the eyes, the things that we watch, that we look at, through the ears, the news that we have consumed, the way we speak, the way we touch, the way we think and perceive. Those are all nutriments for us. So the Buddha said nothing can grow without food. Literally, they call news feeds, right? Media feeds. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in that. Feeding, food. We are consuming food. And I thought, wow, I've become such a strong Democrat with such strong views too. How has it become? Well, it has been fed. When you watch, the mainstream news, you get all of these, this certain kind of information. And then when you watch Fox News, it's like an alternate reality. You're not sure which one is real. But they definitely, it's the same situation, but you hear very different take on, right? Very different views. It's so amazing. And so for us, all of us has been fed, right? We have been fed with our eyes, through our eyes, through our ears, nose, mouth, touch, thoughts. We have been fed. And that is why, as a result, feelings of conviction, feelings of despair, of fear, of suspicion, we have been fed. And that is why we become so adamant in our own views, what's right and what's wrong. And so in that way, we feed with our sense organs, we feed with our volition. That's a third kind of food. So edible food, sense impressions, volition. Our deepest intention, what we want for ourselves, for the world. We have also been fed with that. And the fourth kind of nutriment, that's consciousness. Individual consciousness and collective consciousness. We have become such a divided country, such a divided, families. Our families have been very divided because we have been feeding ourselves with this kind of nutriments that become very toxic to us. So, as I was listening to this elder sister reading about the Four Nutriments, I felt so deeply, wow, the foods that we have been feeding ourselves as individuals and as a nation. This is because that is all this despair and confusion and sadness and fear and suspicion. This is because of the feedings that we have done to ourselves and to each other. And I learned to sit with that every morning as I went to sitting. I would look into the Four Nutriments. How has this come to be? And one morning, I think it was just, 3 or 4 days after the election, as I was sitting quietly, following my breathing, relaxing my body, just watching my thoughts. And a voice arose. I love you, Trump. Seriously, it came. It was inconceivable before. But it did come to me. I love you, Trump. And you know what? It was so natural. Although a second before, I could never have thought of that phrase. But it came so naturally that it came again. And throughout that day, a couple of times it came up in my mind in the next few days. Because I've learned that, whether you are pro-Harris or pro-Trump, they're both in us. Elements in them are also in us. We are all that. We are all that and more. So to reject one and celebrate the other, that's still a mind of discrimination. That's still rejecting ourselves. But to be able to see that I am the discriminator and I am the discriminated. There's a wonderful story At Home in the World Thầy shared. Thầy said, Thầy just gave a talk at the church in Minneapolis. And Thầy was quite tired afterwards. So he was doing very slow walking meditation back to his room. And there was this car. It came to us, like an abrupt halt right behind Thầy. Like it was screeching. And the driver shouted from his driver's seat, "This is America. This is not China." And Thầy stood very still. And Thầy said, actually, he wasn't upset. I love this part. I have to read it to you. The driver threw open the door, glared at me, and shouted, "This is America. This is not China," and drove off. Maybe he thought, who is this Chinese person who dares to walk in freedom in America? And he could not bear it. Maybe he thought, this is America. Only white people can live here. You Chinese people, how dare you to come here? How dare you to walk with such freedom? You have no right to walk that way. This is America. This is not China. I was not angry. That was the good thing about it. I thought it was rather funny. I thought, if he had just paused for a moment, I would have told him, I agree with you 100%. This is America. This is not China. Why do you have to shout at me? We know that the seed of discrimination lies in all of us. I have been shouted at by all kinds of people of all different shades of color. The oppressed and the oppressors lie within each one of us. And our practice is to attain the wisdom of non-discrimination. When people call us African American, we should answer yes. When they call us African, we answer yes. And when they call us American, we also answer yes. When people call the names of those who are discriminated against, we answer yes. And when they call the names of those who are discriminating against others, we also answer yes. All of them are us. Within each of us is both the victim of discrimination and the one who discriminates. So, if they call us Democrats, we should answer. If they call us Republicans, we should answer. Exactly. And when we can say yes like that, then our nation, our world, have a chance. We won't just fight each other. We won't just destroy each other. But we will do our best to cooperate, to work with each other. to make the best of the situation. And it all takes roots within ourselves that we are able to be at home in the here, in the now, as it is, to be at peace, to be safe in our own body, to be at ease, at home in our own feelings. Another aspect of being at home. So we have the body, the feelings, the mind, and the objects of mind. The mind. When we have this is a Chinese character for perceptions. Perceptions. It has two parts. The upper characters, this is a tree, and then this is the eye, and the lower character, that is tam, means heart or mind. Yeah. That's perception. The tree plus the eye by themselves, that means the sign or the appearance. So you have a tree and the eye look at it. That's the sign, the appearance of the tree. But it is this mind that will make our perception. This mind. For example, in the past, there was a tree, a big branch fell down, hit our head. So when you see a similar tree, you look at that, you say, that's a dangerous tree. I hate that tree. I'm afraid of that tree. See? But another person is the same tree, but it was in your backyard, a similar tree. You have many beautiful memories sitting under the shade of that tree with your loved ones. You look at that tree, oh, it brings you such comfort and safety. Do you see that? The sign, the appearance is the same, but it's this state of mind. It's the experiences that we've gone through in life, the things that we've fed ourselves, that we determine our perception whether that person is dangerous or kind, safe, whether this world is beautiful or this world is terrible. It all depends on our state of mind, what we have gone through and what we are feeding it here and the now. How we are rehearsing those thoughts and those views will determine what we see the world, how we see the world. It will color our vision. And so that is why in our practice of mindfulness, we learn to clear the mind, to have more clarity, like a window that is dust, full of dust, that we learn to wipe, clean the window day by day, so that we can see things as they are and not colored by our past experiences, people's views, news feeds, all of that. But we have it from deep within, you see? So to learn to be at home in our own mind. When there's a thought of discrimination arises, we breathe and say, yes, I am. I am the one who discriminates against myself, my loved ones, other people in my neighborhood, in my country, in other countries. Yes, I am a discriminator. And it brings peace because we're not rejecting anything about ourselves. We're not too good for it, for anything, but we're not too bad for anything. We are all of that, and thankfully, we are all so much more. And it takes that kind of awareness, that kind of true embrace to resist the despair that is ever so prevalent in our world. You know, recently, well, not too long ago, I received an email from somebody that I helped since that child was only 13 or 14 years old. And she went through a lot of trauma in her life, and she wasn't doing well at all in high school. And I just happened to meet her at a retreat, and then she came back and stayed at the monastery. So I've been her mentor all these years, over 10 years now. And she was able to finish high school, to go to college, and actually to do a master degree, a program. And then she's been working very hard, and I was just concerned, just always try to remind her to practice. Because if right now you don't have a job yet, if you cannot take care of yourself, then it will be harder when you have a job and a family to take care of yourself, right? So we need to learn to do it right here and right now. So one day I got a letter from her, and in her very long letter, email, she was questioning and doubting everything that I ever did for her. And the words were very harsh, very, very painful. I admit I only read it once and it was enough. And I went to bed, and I don't think the outside temperature, was any colder. But that night, I was shivering. My body was going through shock. And I was pulling the blankets over my head to just keep myself warm. But I found myself not angry or bitter. But more than half the night, I kept saying, I hope that you'll be okay. I hope that you will come out of this okay. I was praying for that child. Because I felt probably because she was working so hard, she was going through some sort of a mental breakdown, if not even a psychotic breakdown, because she had gone through a lot of trauma as a child. So she's very vulnerable to these things. So I just pray that she would be okay, that she would get help if needed, so she wouldn't ruin, everything she's worked for so hard and walk away from everything, And it wasn't difficult for me to pray for her and not feeling bitter or not feeling like I'm going to shut my heart and never help anybody again. Because day after day, how I feed myself is that may I love others unconditionally. May I do my best to help people and not expecting anything in return. I owe everything to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha for my own healing and transformation. And I would want to do that for anybody else. And it saved me. It saved me from becoming bitter or angry or feeling betrayed or just shutting down. But still my body was still going through that, you see? The body still went through shock because it was such a big shock for me. So it's so incredibly important to bring that awareness, to bring mindfulness into our daily life. As you walk, come back to the steps that you are taking. You have to walk anyway. Your mind can think about, 100,000 things but your steps, or you can bring your mind to your steps and be aware of them and not to be so divided from within. You see, you come back to your breath. The breath will tell you what's going on. When you breathe heavily, when you breathe rapidly, when your breathing is shallow, you know your body is going through stress. Your mind is under severe stress. Your breathing pattern tells you if you are at ease, at peace, or you are angry, or you are not feeling well. When you are dying, there will be a different breathing pattern as well. So to get to know our breathing, to get to know our steps, is to get to know ourselves, our mind, our feelings, our thoughts and perceptions, you see? And to calm them, to walk more slowly, to put our hands on our belly and breathe. Say, it's okay, it's okay. To sit and embrace ourselves, that is to be truly at home in ourselves. I breathed that whole night. I couldn't fall asleep. I breathe. And when I stay up late at night, I keep going to the restroom. It's like they go in tandem. So I would do walking meditation to the restroom, and then I would come back, lie down, and breathe. But that is how I protect my love. That's all we have, really. Nothing very grand. We want to do great things in the world. We want to change the world. But if our heart is contracted, if our heart is full of bitterness and suspicion, we will not be able to do any good. Even there's too much toxin in our body for our own body to be well. Our speech will be toxic. Our behaviors will be toxic to others. We cannot change anything for the better if we don't preserve that love, that compassion in our own heart. And to this day, I continue to pray for that young person, for her to get help, for her to go through that breakdown, to come out of it. Let us breathe together. So my dear ones, I hope that you will have a chance to read in depth this book written by our beloved teacher at home in the world, and to learn much wisdom from his teachings, from his sharing, but to remember that we need to be at home in ourselves in order to be at home in the world, And that is to learn to be at home in the here and now, to be safe in our own body, okay? To be at ease, at home in our own feelings, whatever they may be. To learn to be at home in our mind and in our perceptions. Do not be swept away by them. To simply acknowledge them as they are. To breathe with them, neutralize them. To bring a spaciousness. To bring love, understanding to our own thoughts and feelings and perceptions. And to say yes to the discriminative mind that arises in us all the time. Thank you, my dear ones. Enjoy the practice of non-fear. Keep breathing and smiling. Let us sit up beautifully, solid as a mountain, free as a white cloud,